I'm Patrick Donnelly, Program Director of the Frost Place. Welcome to the first evening of readings of the 2025 Poetry Seminar. If you're looking for an online summer poetry conference where your work will get the focused attention of some of America's finest poet teachers, please check out the poetry seminar at frostplace.org. We'd love to have you join us next year. Our readers tonight will be Saba Keramati and Kathy Fagan. Saba Keramati is a Chinese-Iranian writer from the San Francisco Bay Area. Her debut poetry collection, Self-Mythology, was published last year, chosen by Patricia Smith for the Miller-Williams Poetry Series at University of Arkansas Press. Saba was a finalist in our 2025 Poet-in-Residence competition, nominated by Eduardo C. Corral. Please welcome Saba Keramati.
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for having me. I'm very excited to be part of this reading series. Thank you, Patrick, for that introduction, and super excited to read with Kathy. I feel very honored. So this is my debut collection, as Patrick said, Self-Mythology. And I will start by reading two poems that appear back to back in the book. One takes place in my father's country and one takes place in my mother's. So I will just go ahead and read them as a grouping. Inside Persepolis. It's called a site of ruins. My father says it was an empire. I see nothing but crumbled columns. A child drops her mother's hand, reaches toward a stone flower. A bird with two faces. The lions, trapped in a museum, far away. A dragonfly lands in the dry earth, glimmering wings like veins in a pale wrist. The sun makes it hard to see, to think there was once a river that flowed here. A man spits on the ground, mud. My mother in a headscarf, her china skin so unlike my own, the dust like a carpet over the bones. Self-portrait with crescent moon and plum blossoms. In the light of the moon that I only half belong to, my skin swells, stinging and red as lanterns. This waning moon, its insides full of goddesses and heartbreak, lore I've learned from history books and not my own blood. So take it, China, take my blood with these mosquitoes running rampant. Suck the unbelonging out of me. How long will it take to work? I shape myself with the emblems I can gather. Let me write myself here with these symbols I claim to know, swear are in my lineage, proving myself to my own desire to be seen. The next poem I will read is an abecedarian, so 26 lines A to Z. As those two poems indicated, my father immigrated from Iran and my mother immigrated from China. And everybody knows, I'm sure, the life of immigrants has never been easy in this country. So this poem is for that experience, and it's called The Dream. Apples hang in the garden like fate, bruised by lies. There is a heaven only the good can reach. What sounds beyond possibility often is. Darkness leaks The contract of hard work is not enough. Fathers walk through the garden, plucking fruit for their children. Their children are greedy, even if they do not know it. How can they not be with all that was promised? I open my mouth. Instead of a scream, 100 jasmine petals take wing. My father floats on them to a kingdom where he is king. There are no subjects, only fruit. Lemons he can send to me when I am sick. Plums for digestion. My mother ripples into view, birthing me. I feel her neck crane to look at me before I am out. I feel her heart sink when I am pronounced a girl. Feel the suffering, however quiet, that is to come. I am born again and again, reincarnated to the same self, the same fate. Snow is falling. The cycle of water means it will fall again. Tomorrow, perhaps, when I wake up, urging myself to remember this, my father a king, my mother anew, visiting the possibilities of their lives, wondering who they might be. I hear a whisper, Shaoxing, have a small heart. There is too much to lose otherwise. Yearning is dangerous. A small breeze turns into a great zephyr. A door opens. Night pours out. Because this is the Frost Place reading in honor of one of our great poets, American poets, I will read a poem in my collection that references another great poet, a living poet, Sharon Olds, a poet who I deeply, deeply admire and love. She has a poem called I Go Back to May 1937 that writes her parents' story. And in my book, I have kind of a remix of that poem, and it's called Rewrite, I Go Back. For a moment, it's all still there. A mirage of the California heat, wavering between now and memory. I can see them in the past at this window. The gleam of the blue neon open sign above their heads, like a flood ready to wash them away. He is younger than I've ever seen him, drinking chocolate milk. Is this the first time or the third? I know he came here more than once, not for the grocery store chocolate milk, for the woman behind the cash register. She is bright-eyed, yet perhaps it was this day he saw the faint rubble of Tiananmen Square left on her cheeks. Should I go in and tell her it will never wash away? Or maybe this is the moment she learns that too. The man drinking chocolate milk still smells of Iranian dirt and bomb smoke. In a year, they'll be married. She'll be pregnant. Should I go in and tell them that now is the best time to buy a house? Right now, they are fading, but they still believe in so much. They don't need to know their apartment will be too small, that their one child will be their last, or that their love has an expiration date. They will fight, and there will be anger they can't forget. They will suffocate in their small apartment. Their daughter will cry alone in her bed while their screams rattle the kitchen glassware. Their insults will hang on the door frames. I could go in and tell them. But what if these sweet moments are enough to last a lifetime? What could they do differently, anyhow? Maybe we can remember past the hurt. The more I remember something, the more it seems to shift. I remember someone spat on me once, and I said nothing. Should I go in and tell them? Thank you. I'm going to read. We were talking about Michigan earlier today, which is where I'm located these days. I'm just outside of Detroit. Um, and this next poem is one that takes place in the northern parts of Michigan, at a place called Sleeping Bear Dunes. At the lake shore, I am reminded that we are different. In the sand, we take off our shoes. My lover says this is his favorite place in the world. This is not an ocean. It looks like one. There is no place I love enough to call it mine. At this horizon, I forget what I am looking at. I am here, wondering which water is a grave and which is just a beach. What pastoral is this? Me against this whiteness. Around us, does anyone know where we are? I am here, and I am in his parents' living room being introduced to a new girlfriend, a new baby, his family ever expanding, and they are all white, white, white. He tells me to look at the sunsets and not around us. I think it's because he's starting to understand. Around us, a white woman talks loudly on her phone, drowning out the call of the gulls. Another in flip-flops flings sand behind her with every step, refuses to go barefoot, complains about the burning on the bottoms of her delicate feet. Take me home, I want to say, but I do not know where I mean. I've walked 3 miles in dunes now, and I am in the same country, my feet bending in unnatural ways. Everyone is sweating. If I close my eyes, I could pretend it's just us. We are just two people in love. There is nothing complicated about it. Once, his parents called mine brave instead of forced to be here. Let me check the time really quick. Okay, I will read a couple short poems from this book before I end. And then I will read a new poem. But the last two, I'll start with another self-portrait. This book has many self-portraits. It is called Self-Mythology, after all. Self-portrait as two. A twin. Exposed heart stretching outward. Two things can be true at once. Scissors and blood. In the mirror, a body. Cut the stray hairs around brows and lips. Hold the blade against the left thigh. Press against existing stretch marks. Skin trickles red. Alive, but less. Cut the right thigh too. One eye smaller than the other. Hand pressed against glass hand. The symmetry of these halves never adds up. Fractions get fractioned the farther I move from myself. Imagine a daughter, half of me already, then one half of each half, then barely me at all. What's the math I need to make that count? Imagine a future woman. She is quarter or eighths. Will she be beautiful? Or will she look like me, at herself, in the mirror, the black of her eyes, like a one-winged crow? I will end from this book with the title poem of the collection. Self-mythology. I learn and I mourn for not learning earlier. The mint grew but was not eaten, a harvest turned to waste. The old brick of this air keeps the wandering night cold and inside. I cannot fathom my mother before she was my mother. What forgiveness is necessary for someone doing their best? There is no relief, only the swell of an inward tide back toward the self. I learn and I mourn. There is no anger, only truth, only consequence, only I gazing at the past of my own body, the shell of myself melting, meaning I will drip to a future where I am a mother, am my mother, and all is what she helped create. One day, too, my daughter will break upon the shore, and still she will float back. I see it endlessly. Thank you for that. And I have 1 minute left. Is that right, Patrick? Okay, great. I will read one newer poem that came out recently in the spring 2025 issue of Washington Square Review. So this is a work from what I'm currently working on, a second manuscript. This poem is called Memory. The summer before I turned 30, the city decided to update its sewer system. There was a presidential election approaching, Gaza and the West Bank being razed to the ground by US-supplied bombs. The construction let loose hundreds of rats. Some made a nest in our garden, raided every last tomato. The landlords and the city clerks told us to eradicate them ourselves. You, correctly believing me too soft for this task, laid traps, assured me their deaths would be quick, relatively painless. The first night, 4 dead rats. You dug a hole behind the garage, buried them, then reset the springs. When you came inside, your breath shook like a flame in the wind. The next night, 2 snaps within minutes. One of the rats remained undead, struggling under the weight of the metal, the shovel now caked with blood. You dug open again the freshly turned dirt. The yard seemed to fog over, a gray July. Rats continued walking into the traps. Once only a leg was left for you to find. With each burial, a growing tension. I feel bad for them, I told you, meaning the leg, either snapped or chewed off, or the rats who may have suffered overnight. But we did not stop. It's eerie, what we can make sense of when we need to. 13 were caught. We knew it was over when the smaller, more acceptable critters returned to the yard. Days later, I smelled death. I was unfamiliar with the scent, noting it only as foul. Under the firewood, we found it. What I thought were shallow inhales of dying were maggots, buried inside the rat, having entered through its eyes. Their crawling undulated its body. Patches of fur had fallen out, revealing skin bruised blue. One more to add to the grave. I knew these were not the first animals you'd killed, but I'd never considered the smell of what you had hunted. I asked you to describe it to me. Like rot, you said, but thicker, inescapable. That night, you slept without a blanket. Too warm, you said, like something was sticking to you. I touched your arm, and I could feel the heat of your red blood rise. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Saba. That was a wonderful reading. So glad to have heard those poems. Stacy has put a link in the chat to not only the faculty books for this year and the books of our guest readers, but many books by the participants this year. And if we missed a book, please let us know and we will add it. But this is a great way to support the Frost Place. A small donation is taken for each book order that you make. Kathy Fagan was poet in residence at the Frost Place in 1985. She apparently survived that and is still speaking to us. Kathy is the author of 6 books of poetry and co-founded the MFA program in creative writing at The Ohio State University. She was named Ohio Poet of the Year for 2017. Please welcome Kathy Fagan.
Hi, everybody. Thank you for being here. And thank you, Saba, for that amazing reading. That new poem is harrowing. Absolutely harrowing. I loved it. Okay, I'm just gonna I'm not gonna read from Bad Hobby tonight, the most recent book. I'm gonna read from the opening sequence from the book of poems that will be out next year. It's in 14 short sections. Don't panic. It won't take me more than 10 or 15 minutes to read it. And I'll pause very, very briefly between the sections. Listening to others is what it's called. Run like squirrels after each other. Lengthen like buds out of the brown earth that lifts and floats a little with the movement of wrens. No, it is not spring yet. Not even now in our deep crisis is it spring. All growth turgid, she said obscenely. Turgid spring. Fistfuls of flower or leaf, one reproductive, the other not, both necessary. My hands ungloved throughout the pruning, sliced and punctured, the welts as brief as the roses will be. And hot tea, brewed with the one bag found in an otherwise empty cupboard on the coldest day. The name he'd shouted, old bag, not half-wrong man in a hurry, taking what he can of the world because it's owed him. Those who touched my hair in the street, my ass in the subway, who kicked at pigeons and taught their sons to do the same. They're either dead now or, older bags than I, awakened to their cruelties and changed. We should not expect it. A good life, paying what we owe the world. The priest asked that every mother in the congregation stand. Every grandmother, great-grandmother, and mother-in-law, encouraging laughter. And then, in his largesse, every foster mom, child care provider, preschool and elementary school teacher, until I was the only woman seated at Mother's Day Mass, my devout, dementing dad staring forward, head high and at an angle I recognized as ashamed, not of, but for me, or so I like to believe. And so I do believe, agnostic that I am, in the wielded power of humiliation to crush, till not a drop of God is left us. Run like rounds of automatic fire, lengthen like blood over the pale cloth that lifts and floats a little with the settling wind. The images are more than that. Our helplessness is less than theirs. Near here, a wall of lost things, keys mostly, hung from pins. No one stops to search. But what of the rooms? What of the locks? Pockets of breath held inside. In the days of landlines, when I was young, if my parents spent an evening at friends, they'd call their destination and leave our phone off the hook. The logic being, I suppose, they'd hear our screams in case of calamity. All night I listened, receiver at my ear, to mostly underwater noises, though I might have caught a passing voice, a laugh. Sometimes I'd press the switch hook, daring the line to cut. Sometimes I'd press my luck and speak. Hard keeping in view the snow moon for long as it rose behind trash can, tree, cloud. Also known as hunger moon, sinking, crowning, then tucking back in. I wouldn't nurse, my mother said, refused formula too. There were later times I hungered, others I was full, each time living on my body's bounty, alternately less and more, the rounded shadow pooled beneath my feet by noon, tilting planet of darkness, waxing corona of light, sufficient, without need. As for calamity, etymologists claim obscure origins for the word, its agrarian roots shared with many languages, as with the Old Irish kell, to strike. Glass that changes color when reheated is said to strike. See also strike camp, strike gold, strike out, oil, through, back, hit and get hit until you feel it, a sudden realization that this is what our ruling class has decided. First roll of the bowl that knocks down all the pins. Airstrike, clock, hunger, labor, lightning, hit and get hit until you no longer feel it. A pose, a coin, a deal, a blow, a match. Run like the Magdalene's abundant hair, long enough to clothe her. Lengthen like the bones the artists carved beneath her penitent flesh, ascetic now, beautiful, as they say, only on the inside, one way to end her. A Gnostic text discovered in 1945 attributes to Magdalene words long attributed to Jesus in the New Testament. The suffering of each day is sufficient. Workers deserve their food. Disciples resemble their teachers. In a persistent rumor, some say his animator spread in 1966, Walt Disney arranged to be cryonically preserved, that his body, or at least his head, lies frozen under Cinderella's castle. At San Diego's Frozen Zoo nearby, the rare, endangered, and extinct incubate in shapely bottles of pink liquid, like potions or perfumes, glass wombs for rhino, viper, sea star. The last of the studio's films to use cell animation, The Little Mermaid spawned the Disney Renaissance of 1989. Cells go for a fortune on the internet, each one of a kind. People used to say, soaking wet, they'd got caught in the rain, a sudden downpour, the pouring rain. The rain is constant, I wrote in a postcard once, perhaps from here. I was 15, and on the tour bus where I could crush on her best was a girl named Rain, who napped on her brother's shoulder as we drove. I didn't long to be the shoulder. I didn't wish I were the girl. I needed a face for my own true soul, is how I'd put it to myself. And it was hers I wanted, not mine. When the yoga instructor says that breath is the body's only autonomic function our minds can regulate, I think of my father's last breath. When she calls for chest openers, I think of my mother's autopsy. Then I think morbid and I let that judgment go. It's theorized pigeons' navigational skill relies on sensory, magnetic, and celestial cues. At rest, they roost communally, chests puffed, in rows, savasana, Sanskrit for corpse pose. Sparking when the chisel struck, flawed with small cracks, Michelangelo abandoned the work intended for his tomb. One stone, 4 figures, the artist, dead Christ, 2 Marys, 10 years. It took 10 minutes on our high school tour. How loud we were, and quick. I pronounced it ugly, fearing failure, the mess of love and death I couldn't recognize as mine. The mother's lips at her son's ear, his lifeless hand on the Magdalene's shoulder, the old man's effort to hold them all, collapsing pyramid of burden and embrace, their own dust puddled at their feet. Run like noon bells across the stone and hillside, lengthen in the clamor as shadows lift and float beneath you. You are a pin in the map now, wobbling in the gravity between strike and echo, the rounded red expectancy, clods of upturned earth. Blood runs there, and voices, the planet's many infrasounds that birds are said to hear. You are one pin, wobbling in the gravity, the map in bloom with others. He'd take me to the city with him to sell raffle tickets for church. Selling chances, he called it. I was small, easily turned by the crowds, but I was loud. I'd learned to shout so Dad could hear. His ringer, he called me. Toward evening, he'd lift me to his shoulders above the other voices, close to his ears. We had a lot to say. We were wordless at the end. After he died, I took his hearing aids with me. Sometimes I bend to them and speak. Sometimes I raise them to my own ears and listen. Thank you.
Absolutely incredible. I'm gobsmacked by those poems. Thank you so much. We have a little time now. Would anyone like to ask our readers some questions?
I had a question for, give me a second, for Kathy. What book did you just read from?
It's a book of mine that's coming out next year, next
It's
fall.
coming out next year. Okay.
It'll be titled The Unbecoming.
Okay. Wonderful. Both were wonderful.
And Kathy, when you began writing Listening to Others, had you any idea that it was going to expand as far as it has expanded? This beautiful piece.
I'm not one to write sequenced poems. This book begins with that sequence and ends with another, with individual poems in between. I don't know what got into me, except to say that I was making a lot of notes, as one does, and they seemed to be connected, but not. I wasn't detecting a narrative through line the way I do in other, or lyric through line for that matter, the way I do in other poems, individual poems. And so these two seem to require sections. They're not numbered sections, but they are in sections. They're separated asterisks in both cases.
I read I read the poem prior in the journal in which it was published, and
Poetry
it's
Northwest.
exquisite. I
Thank
did.
you.
Yes, it's so beautiful.
I wanted to ask Saba, since so many of us are working on books here, I wanted to ask about the experience of putting this first collection together and how you made your choices, and how long it took you before you got the book published and all of that.
Yeah, thank you for that. It took about a year of submitting it, and throughout that time, I was reordering it a little bit here and there. It was my MFA thesis, so about half of it stayed the same from when I graduated with my MFA and the version that it is now. And one thing that did stay the same was the first and last poems. So kind of working within that structure was very helpful for me as I pieced together the new pieces that I was working on. Because between graduation and publication, it took about 2.5 years of me still working on it and bringing in new poems and figuring out what the book really wanted to be. But once I found my sort of narrative, I was able to pick out what was missing and as well as what was not touched upon enough, like a few poems, so many poems I ended up taking out that just a lot of poems about my father I ended up taking out. So the book is a lot more about my relationship with my mother. And then now putting in together a second collection, it has a lot more about my father. So I would say my biggest thing was like being able to learn what to let go and learn what wasn't really working and being okay with letting those poems sit for a while. Because I think sometimes I still do this. I write a poem that I think is good, and then it might not fit into a theme or a through line of what I'm working on, and then I feel a little too precious with it to want to give it away entirely. So learning that was important. Learning that some things take more time and you don't have to shove it into a collection right away, I think was the hardest part.
Mm.
Absolutely. Thank you, Saba.
I had a question for Saba. There were so many moving lines, but one struck me that I'd like to ask you about. No place to call mine, I think you said. And I don't know if you were born in America or if you were born in one of those other two countries. But from my perspective, I'm so rooted. I'm just a rooted person, even though my dad was a son of immigrants from Finland. But Connecticut is it for me. Don't you have a place that you can call yours, Saba?
It's a really good question. Thank you for that, Marilyn. Yeah, I think what I was intending with that line was more the idea that when I think of places, including places that I think of as close to me, so places I might consider a home, it's really hard for me to forget that there were people that came first. And I'm sure you know this, and the Frost Place being in New Hampshire and you being in Connecticut. New England is a very fascinating place for stuff like this because you'll be walking down the street and you'll see, you know, this was the first pharmacy in this town, memorialized on a plaque. And I think that stuff is really beautiful and historic and important in its own way. But it's also like I read that plaque and a part of me goes, well, you know, this land wasn't just sitting here waiting to be a pharmacy, right? It was so much more than that. So the line is less about feeling fully disconnected from everywhere because there are genuinely places that I feel at home in. I live in Dearborn, Michigan right now, and I love it. It's home to me. But yeah, it's just it's more about being cognizant of what came before, even as we are connected to places that we live.
That's a good answer. Yeah, thank you. Yeah.
Thank you for that question.
It's a sort of an existential feeling too, that nobody's given the ground that they're on, you know, that kind of thing.
Right. And what is poetry for, if not existential questions?
Thank you so much to our wonderful readers and to all of you for attending. Tomorrow night, our readers will be Amanda Gunn and Nathan X. Osorio. Please join us again tomorrow night.